Hi, this is Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my studio. And I'm in my live studio here in Chesapeake, Virginia. And I'm broadcasting live to YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitch. And also later on I'll post it on Instagram. And I'm in the studio with my wife Gloria.
Hello, everyone.
And she'll be monitoring the broadcast and also with the chat room. And the chat room's live, so if you give me a comment or give me a like, I would appreciate that. It gives me, it helps my rating. If this is the first time you've seen this presentation or this show, give me a like and also subscribe to my channel. And once you subscribe, you'll be notified of my next video. And I'll come on every week at Thursday at 2 o'clock p.m. Now today I'm going to do a what I call a special painting. It's called Morning Glories, and my inspiration comes from it's the beginning of spring, and I want to do a flower painting. So I figure I'd pick a flower, and these are beautiful flowers. I love to look at them, and we'll talk about them in a few moments. But I'm also going to dedicate this painting and this program to my wife Gloria.
Oh, thank you, sweetheart.
And because she's been with me from the very beginning of this live broadcast. Really right now, today, this is my 120th program. 120 programs, and she's been with me every step of the way. So I'll tell you what we do. After the program, we'll sit down and talk about what went wrong and maybe some things we can improve on. So she gives me lots of advice on things I need to work on, things I may have forgotten a little bit. So very helpful to me to keep the program, make myself better each time I get on air. So let's go to my painting table and let me get started. My overhead camera. Okay, Morning Glories. They're a beautiful flower. And I went and researched and got some pictures here to take a look at, give me some thoughts about what I wanted to paint. And you can see they're very colorful. And they come in all kinds of sizes and shapes and colors. Here it happens to be one I looked at, okay? But it's right in the center. It's not it would make a good painting, but it gives me an inspirational idea. You can see I can look at some of the characteristics of it and take a look at what the shape of the flower is and what the colors are there and sort of the arrangement. And also look at the background, a lot of leaves and different colors there also. Then I found another one also. This was another series of morning glory flowers. You can see they come in all kinds of colors. You can see there's light blue, there's a little bit of pink or red, and then there's even a dark blue one back in here. So they come in all kinds of colors and shapes. So that was another part of the inspiration. And then I kept searching and I kept looking at different pictures, and I found this one. I got this on the internet. You can go on there and you get free videos, and this is a free video. So I downloaded it. And what I did, I liked the colors. And I like the sort of like the layout there, but they've got some problems here compositionally. And today I want to focus a little bit more on the last several weeks. We've talked about the elements of design, but more importantly is the composition, how you arrange things on the painting to make it more interesting. And so what I looked at is my design chart, and around the outside is the principles of design. Those are the things that you think about as you put the elements together. And so we're going to talk about a little about this today, what I did. This was a beautiful photograph. And again, like most photographs, it's just a photograph. So what I did was I took this and I made some changes. And you'll see what I did. The first thing I did, I liked the shapes. Really liked the different kinds of shapes I have. And I took this large one down here at the bottom. And I moved it up here. I moved it, made it a little bit larger, and moved it up into this section here. And what I did also, I took this flower here, this flower here, and I moved it. I took that and I moved it over here. Okay, so that gave me a little more space. It blocked in some of the space over here that was empty. And then up in here, there were a couple little add-ons that really weren't important and didn't really describe too much. So I took those out. You can see there, I deleted those. And this flower over here. Again, I want to keep it. It's a good size and it's a good shape, but it's pointing in the wrong direction. It's pointing out, which takes the eye out of the painting. So what I did, you'll see up here, I took it, copied it, and reversed it. So this painting is pointing into the composition. This one's pointing into this, This was also pointed. So the position of those are very important as far as the final configuration is concerned. So I used that configuration of flowers, but I moved those around, and I used my Photoshop to do that. Okay. So I wanted to show you that a little bit about composition. So what I've done is then I've altered the shape. I've altered the shape of the design. I've got the sizes I like, and I've got. Let me talk about it now. What I did here is here's my value study. I took these shapes and put them on my sketch pad. I did a quick sketch for evaluation of of my composition. Number one, I like the arrangement here now. I've got now I like variation. Here's variation. I've got I got 5 different shapes here. They're all different sizes. I've got a large, I got a medium, and I got a small. So I got baby bear, mama bear, and papa bear. 3 different sizes. Got a couple extras over here. So I got on unequal number. I've got an arrangement. Now look, they go into an alternating variation, up, down, up. But there's also different spaces between. You see here in the final photograph, I've got the spaces in between are different also. There are different spaces between the flowers. So the arrangement of shapes is very important in a design. And then I thought about the background. I'm going to make the background like a medium value back here. Just it's not no design. There's no definition. It's just going to be a light background mixture of color. And I'm going to have a light middle ground. I have a light middle ground, and because that gives me transition into the background. And I'm going to have like a darker background in the foreground, a darker background here. Now the problem here with light against light, I've got a light color here and a light color here. I have to think about contrast. So one of the things in my principles here is contrast. In order to get contrast, well, if I don't have a value contrast, I can do a color contrast. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a color contrast between this color and the background. You can see I've got different sizes here. I've got a large foreground. I've got a small medium ground size. And I've got a medium size background. Again, different sizes of different areas. Very important in design. Okay, and I've got lots of lines in there, which we talked about last time. But there's some lines, but they're not important. But they're lines in the composition. Mainly, it's a horizontal composition going across this way. The flowers are arranged horizontally, and my arrangement of the spaces are also horizontally. Now, the dominance, we'll talk about a little bit later. The dominance is in the shape of these flowers. That's the dominance. The variation is also dominant. I got lots of variation here. And the contrast, when you see what I've done, the lights and the darks, and the light colors, I'm going to have contrast there also, which will give me dominance. So let me talk a little bit about what colors I'm going to use. Now I did a color chart, and let's talk about that. Here I'm going to use these 2 colors here. This is Opera, and this is Peacock Blue. Incidentally, this is Gloria's favorite color. She likes Peacock Blue, and she also likes Opera. But the combination here, look at the beautiful violets you get out of that. The beautiful violet between these 2 mixtures here. I get a light and a dark violet color. Beautiful. Now the contrast, I'm going to have a lighter value contrast here, which will be a yellow green against this purple or violet. And you can see here on the color wheel. Let's take a look at the color wheel now before we start in painting. If I take the red violet, which is what this is, if you look at the color of the photograph, and I don't have to use the same colors of photographs, it just happens to be an example. Let's see. If I take the color I use in the photograph, it's here somewhere. If I want to match this color here, it's really a red violet color with a light value. And if you look across the color wheel, yellow green is the opposite color of that. So yellow green is what my complementary color is going to be. So that gives me for this color, that is the largest contrast between that color and the background. So I'm going to choose a yellow green as the background behind this row of flowers. So that was my determination here. So that's the yellow green now. You can see now that mixture of yellow green next to that purple. You can see how bright they're going to be. So that was my choice of those colors there. Now the background colors are going to be, again, I'm going to use Peacock Blue and a little bit of burnt sienna here, and that'll give me a dark green. Look at that. I get a multi-value, but mostly dark, and a very rich looking green. And that'll be a nice background and also a foreground color, which will be these two colors, background back here and a foreground up here in darker value in comparison with the middle ground, which is a light value. Okay, now I played around with some techniques, which I'll go to when I start painting. So those are some of the decisions I made. Those are some of the decisions I made as I designed the painting. A very simple painting with flowers, but also an exercise in laying out the right colors, the right shapes, and the right values. So now I'm going to I'm using this different kind of paper today. This is something I want to use. It's a Fabriano Rusticano. It's a traditional white color, 100% cotton, and it's on a block form, so I don't have to worry about taping it down or anything. It's on a block form, and it's a 9x12 size. It's a little smaller size, and that's what I want to do. Make it a little bit smaller, and not as large, because I don't need to have it large. I also use a little bit of masking fluid there. There's some white colors, but there's little areas I want to keep white, so I'll put some masking fluid down there. So I've got my drawing on here, a little bit of masking fluid, I'm ready to go. Okay, so let me start out with my first color, and that's going to be that opera. That's a beautiful color all by itself. Now I'll rinse out the brush a little bit. So I'm using a 1/2-inch Holbein brush here to do some of the mixtures, get the paint ready. And this is Peacock Blue, again another color, beautiful all by itself. And I'll be using that in the flowers, and also, like I mentioned, I'll be using some of it in the background and the foreground. But I'm going to concentrate. I'm going to paint the flowers first. So this is the color I'm working on first. This is a combination of these two. So now I'm going to take that Peacock Blue. I'm going to mix it in with that opera, and look at the colors I'm getting. Look at the beautiful colors. That is gorgeous. So I get inspired just by doing the mixing. I don't have to do the painting. I just enjoy mixing the paints. And I'm going to look at that. I can look at that color. If I'm going to match the color on the photograph, I can come pretty close. A little bit, maybe a little more opera in there. But I can do a little matching, and I can take my test sheet, and I can do a little test. And it's a little bit blue, so I'm going to put a little more red into it. And then I come up with I'll put a little more. I also want it to be a lighter value, so I'll put a little more water in that mixture. Now I think I've pretty well got the color I want. Okay, so that mixture there of opera and Peacock Blue is what I'm going to start. Now I'm going to take that color. Now I'm going to switch brushes. Now I'm going to use the number 16 round Holbein brush, and I'm going to make sure it's clean, because I've been painting with it all week, so make sure it's clean when I rinse it out. And I'm going to pick up that color, load the brush. This is a round brush, load it up from the side. And I'm going to start here with it. I'm going to start here with this large flower, and I'm going to watch the edge. Just carefully put it in. It's going to be watch the edges a little bit, and but I'm going to go ahead and just put that in. It's going to be. Now I notice the center has got a darker center in the flower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that right now. I'm going to leave that open. Leave it dark. Leave it dry for right now. But I'm going to go ahead and put this color in. And I can pick up a little bit more blue, a little more red. I can make a variety here. I don't have to have one color all over. I can make a little bit of the difference of the color. It doesn't have to be all the same. So even a little bit of variety in the color of the object is also a good idea. Not to have the same color all the way through, but it's going to be a light color when it dries. Okay, and I'll leave that alone now for a little while. Okay, now we move on to the next one. Now This one over here is the same color, so I'm going to go ahead and use the same mix, that Opera and Peacock Blue, which will give me that beautiful violet. And this also has a darker center, so I'm going to leave this dry. I'm going to leave the center dry over here. And pick up a little more, make this section a little blue. So again, I'm not changing the color, but I'm adding another color in there just to give a little variety to that violet mix. Just to give there's a little bit of shadow here in the flower, so I'm just adding that in as a variation. Okay. And let that dry, and I got one more over here I want to get in, and I'm going to go back in and do a little bit of changes here, just some changes. Not changes. I'm going to do a little bit of technique in a few moments here. So again, I'm going to put the same coloration on this one. Now this one here, I'm going to leave. There's a little bit of darkness on this too. I'm going to leave the center of this one. And I can see a little bit of the connection here with the vine, so that's interesting. All the interesting shape here. Hey, now before I go too far though, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try, and this is a technique I'm going to show you. This one here, on this one, I'm going to use the credit card corner, and I'm going to scrape it. I'm also going to make a mark here, because there's a mark in the flower, and I'm going to do just a couple. So this is, while it's still wet, I'm going to get when I do this, I'll get a dark line. If it's wet enough, I'll get a dark line, like this one over here. And I'll do one over here also on this one, in the shadow. Maybe I'll pull it down here. Wherever I put this card on. Now this one is still wet over here. I'll leave that one. Now this one's a little wetter than the rest of these. These are somewhat dry. Let's try this one. Okay. You can see the darker is, if you do this while it's still wet, you'll get what happens is the paint seeps into the paper. Okay. Now these other two are very light because they're brighter. They're not as well formed. Some of them are a little bit a newer blossom. This is a newer blossom here, so I'm gonna make this a little bit lighter. It's also going to be it's going to be against a darker background, so I'll put that up here to give it a little bit of contrast with the background. So by making this a little bit lighter, and I'm getting a glare from my overhead light, so I'm going to have to look at the side, make sure I'm covered. Okay, and this section over here, I've got another one. So these two shapes are a little bit lighter because they're more in the light, and they're also not quite as developed, or haven't been out. They haven't been out very long compared to these other blossoms. These front blossoms I just did are much more mature. Okay, so leave that light. Okay, and I think what I'll do now, go back, I left a little corner on this one over here, so I'll go back and do a little touch up on this one. Yeah, okay. All right, we're done. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dry the flowers. And what I can do here, I can also play a little bit. No, that's still too wet. I'm going to leave that alone. No, that's it. Not important. So what I did so far, I mixed up a good mixture of Opera and Peacock Blue. It made a beautiful violet, and that violet is the color of the Morning Glory. I'm moving my let the water down a little bit. I'll dry these off real good so I can start putting in the background. Okay, while it's drying a little bit, I'm going to mix up the background color. So now I'm going to use, I'm probably going to use the small Hake brush for the background brush. So I'm going to have that here. And I'm going to mix up, as I said before, I'm going to be using that mixture of burnt sienna mixed in with a little bit of that same peacock blue I did with the violet color. Now peacock blue is kind of a greenish blue, almost a teal color. And then the burnt sienna, of course, has got a little orange and red in it, so it's going to also mix and give me a neutral. And the more I control the mixture, I can make it more bluish or more grayish as I go along. But I'm going to keep this in a medium value. Remember I said I'm going to make the background medium. So let's be more of a medium value of these two colors. And remember, as you're mixing a color, watercolor is going to dry a lot lighter. So you want to make sure that the value that you have is dark enough to come out the results you want. So let's see. Let's take this mixture here and take a look. Now look at that. See that beautiful? It's kind of a greenish, and it's kind of a lot of greens in the background, but it's going to be a dull green because of the mixture of blue and the brown. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead now. I'm going to use the Hake. This is a lot bigger brush, and load it up with that color. And it's on dry, so I'm going to go ahead and put it I'm going to get a little bit darker than that. As you put it on the paper, it starts to spread out. You can tell how much. Don't want to get too brown. Go back in and put a little more of that peacock blue in there. I want to keep it on the greenish side. Now, what I'm doing now is kind of putting in a little bit of value here of the. I'm going to go around this one blossom over here on the edge. So when the paper's dry, you really have to put a lot more water into the mix so that it spreads. And then you have to control the amount of pigment you have in there so it's dark enough. A lot of problems when you start mixing water in with the paint, it gets a lot lighter than you want it to be. So you got to continually monitor the amount of pigment you have in the mix. Because it's going to dry much lighter when it dries, and that's why, watercolor is beautiful, and then but the way you apply it, it has to be controlled with the amount of water you have in the brush. I'm going to paint around these other small blossoms. The most important blossom is this big one here in the front, but these others also, they contribute to the composition because they also have the shape and the colors, and they have a nice contrast with the background. I'll bring this down here because I want to get the background behind these blossoms. So we're painting these beautiful spring flowers called morning glories. And there'll be a lot of flowers this spring all over the place. They're coming out. So we'll probably do a lot more of these during the future broadcast because flowers are so beautiful. And we can find different varieties of them, different colors. And they make a wonderful composition for painting. And a lot of ways of just talking about how to paint them. And so it gives me lots of ideas about techniques to use, different ways of painting flowers, different tools to use. So a lot of things that can be used in painting nature's beauty. Okay. Now what I'm going to do while I'm here, though, while I'm in this section, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put in that light mix of green. And I'm going to use that, remember we talked about putting the yellow green, which is going to be a combination of green number 1 and yellow lemon. And so I'm going to put that right here behind. This goes into the middle ground. And merge that right in with the background. While it's still a little bit damp, let it merge in. Let those colors mix a little bit. Because I really, I don't have a horizon line here, but this is about the closest thing to my horizon line as I want is this little combination of the background and the middle ground when they come together. It kind of makes up a simulated horizon line, which is good enough for planning purposes. So this is more of a horizon line that I have here, where the yellow mixes with the darker green in the background. Now also what I want to do here now, while the paint's still wet, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my credit card again, and I'm going to scrape out some shapes. Let's see if this works here. It's still a little bit too wet, but I can get some of that idea. So I'm going to put in some tree shapes back here. So I'm going to scrape out with the credit card some lines that would indicate that we have branches on some trees there in the background. And you do that while the paint is still a little bit damp, a little bit wet. Over here, this is a little bit drier over here, and you can see you get a different effect over here. It's still damp. So here the shine has gone away. Here the shine is still there. The paint, if you look at it, the paint is still wet over here. So you're going to get a darker, mark when you start scraping away. Over here, the shine's gone away, so I can get a nice clean line marked out. So that's just to show you a little bit of technique on using scraping. Okay. All right. So I wanted to do that while I was going my process here. Again, always in the mood to show different techniques and a way to use the paints and a way to use different tools in the process of painting these flowers. So continue around using the number 16 round Holbein brush, loaded with green number 1 and yellow lemon. Gives me that yellow green mixture, which is what I wanted in the middle ground. And you can see there's a nice contrast, and it's also a contrast with this violet because of the yellow green contrasted with the red violet. And that's what I was looking for, and that was in my planning preparation. And also, your idea here is that while you're doing before you do your painting, do some testing. Get a piece of watercolor paper out and do some testing with your colors. Put your colors side by side. Do your mixes. Play with the combinations. we'll let this dry a little bit up here. Okay. And it kind of let that yellow green go up into the background because it's going to mix with that, and that's okay. That's fine. Echo some of that color up in there. Let's put a little bit of yellow. I'm continuing on with the brushwork. I don't want to have I don't want the color to start and stop. I want it to be a continuation, going from light to dark, a gradation of color. That's another principle of design, is to have a gradation in values, going from light to dark. No sudden stops, no sudden sensation, but a gradual change from one value to another, a light to a dark, or gradation in color, going from a light green to a darker green. That's another gradation we have going on here. Okay. All right. Okay. Now the foreground, and these colors, these flowers here are getting nice and dry, so that's fine. So we have plenty of room down here for the foreground. And I'm going to go ahead and mix up the same mix, but I'm going to make it a little bit darker. So because the foreground has got a darker value. So I'm going to use that Peacock Blue. And I got a large foreground here, so I'm going to mix up a lot more than I had for the background. A lot of Peacock Blue. Make it nice and wet because we've got a big area to mix up. So the wetter you make it, the easier it is for it to spread out. But remember, the wetter you make it also makes it lighter. So I want to make it darker. At the same time, I want to make it just as wet so I can move it. We mix it up. It's going to be nice and dark with that color. No more brown in it. And pick up a little more peacock. And a little touch of black. I've got Payne's gray over here. That'll really darken it up. It won't change the color, it just makes it darker. Okay, now I've got my brush ready, and it's already loaded. I've done the mix with it. I'll go ahead and put in the brush strokes. And down here, very quickly, this foreground is a bunch of leaves, and so we're going to make them dark. And we're not going to worry about the shapes at this point. They're just going to cover in the area. Get it nice and dark. Now, as I come around these blossoms now, these flowers, I'm going to be very careful. Now, this will really show off the shape and the contour of the flower, which is good. Again, this is contrast. We're putting in a dark against the light now, so we're getting a value contrast now with the light and dark. Before, with that lighter green, we were getting a color contrast between the yellow, green, and the violet, the violet color, the purple violet. So we're seeing two different kinds of contrast here today: a value contrast and a color contrast. And you could almost say that that's a simultaneous contrast, because you've got a color contrast and a value contrast in some cases. Now, what I can do now is take this flat brush, and I can go here now. I can make some little. I think I'll take the number 6 round, and I can do a little bit of. Let's see. The yellow green's dry, or almost dry, so I can go ahead and start putting a little bit of edges up here, showing a little bit of grass, shape. Make sure I fill in some of those light areas. Okay. I'm going to make sure I'm happy with the values now, so I'll go and maybe put a little bit more of this mixture here while I still got it on the palette. So what I'm doing, this is partially dry, so I'm putting another layer on. So what I'm doing, I'm layering now another layer on, which will make it a little bit darker. When you add a layer on top of an existing color, it makes it darker. So I'm just adding another layer of pigment on top of what I had. Now that makes it really, I'm making sure it's really dark down here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and dry this. Let me take a look now. I can let it dry a little bit on its own because I want to work on the, let's go back and work on the flowers. I want to do, let's see, I need, I need two brushes for this. Let's see, I have a brush here. Okay. Okay, I'm going to mix, I need to mix up a darker interior there. So what I'm going to use, if you look at the flowers, you see they have this dark center, the dark centers. These three right here. That's the Papa, Mama, and the baby bear. They have three dark centers. And I planned ahead for that. So let's go ahead and, so I'm going to take a little bit of quinacridone violet, which is darker, but it's a darker violet, but it's going to go very nicely with this opera and peacock blue mixture. And the first thing I'm going to do though is take another brush, a larger brush. I'm going to remember this is dry, so I'm going to put a wet. I'm going to wet the outside edge now of this section. Outside edge. This is a little technique I want to show here, how we can get a soft edge. Now, in the center, I want it to be dark. So I'm going to put this in the center, right here. And now it's going to hit that wet section, and it's going to spread out. And that's going to give me that soft edge, or it's going to splatter out like it spreads out like in the photograph. We'll let that dry, and I'll go ahead and work on this one. So I'm putting water around the edge, outside edge of that dry section. Then I'm going to take that darker mix, and I'm going to go in, start in the center, and let it spread out on its own. This is where watercolor does its own thing. And one more. Move that over here. Oh, what I did there is the water dropped into it. So let me pick that up. It's already moist. I'll put a little more water on the edges, just a little bit. And it doesn't take much for this because this is a small area. I'm just going to go ahead and drop it in and let it spread. Let it spread on its own. Okay. Now what I can do now with this brush is I can play a little bit with these the edges. So I can take this and maybe bring this out a little bit. Give it a little shape. And up here. Okay, so what I'm doing there is I'm trying to get, you see it starts very dark in the center, then it starts to go out, and it gets soft edges around the outside of that particular dark center, spreads out. Okay, and we'll let that dry a little bit. And what I can do also while I'm here is take this small brush. Now, okay, I drew what I did in the beginning. Remember I showed you the credit card. Now I'm going to take just a small bit of paint here on the paintbrush, and I can go ahead. I can paint in some of those marks now on the center, very lightly, indicating some of those marks. You see the Morning Glory has these lines or stripes that come out from the center. Put a few of those in. And up here on this one, I put one in with a wet line, and I'll go ahead and put, now this is a dry, it says wet on dry, so it's just a mark. Okay, I'll put a few on this one over here. And even these ones out here have some lines in them too also, but they're very light. So I'm going to take some of the lighter mixture here and go in and make a light mix, light lines. Just a few indications. So what I'm doing there, I'm trying to capture these lines that come out of the flower. The lines you see here, the lines up here. There's this little characteristic line, and this may be a little bit dark, so I can always take it off a little bit. So I'll take a tissue and go in here and kind of blot while it's still wet. Okay, I'll let that dry. Let me test this down here. Okay, this is almost dry. Let me go ahead and put the blow dryer on. Okay, now what I did here as I started out, after I did the middle ground, then I did the foreground with a darker green. Get those centers dry. I'm using a rigger brush now to make those lines a little more defined. Adding a little more definition to these lines here on the flower shape. Okay. What I want to do now is I'm going to take this number 14 round again. Now what I'm going to do is take the 14 round. I'm going to take green number. This is Hooker's green. A little bit of that Peacock Blue. I've got a real dark green now, real dark. This is more green now. I've got Peacock Blue with a lot more. And what I'm going to do now, there's leaves down here, so I'm going to go ahead and put some leaves in. Some leaf shapes on top of this darker background. So now I'm putting a shape over top of this darker background to show up as texture. I'm putting a little more texture down here in the foreground because it's closer to our vision. We can see more of that, of the shapes down here. So I'm going and making some leaf shapes. And these are not very well defined. There's a lot of leaves on this particular vine or bush. Now I can go ahead and add a little more definition up, not definition, a little more texture up here on the edges of this background next to the middle ground, and give a little look of grass, a little high grass. Ooh. Now I think what I can do now, some of these edges on the flower didn't work out as well, so I'm going to take a little bit of white. And I can move. I can go ahead and put in a little more definition here of what I want on these edges. These edges are a little bit hard, so I'm going to make them softer. And tone down those darker marks, so I can just put a little bit of white mixed in with that violet. So I just have a indication. I'm kind of playing around with it now. I'm just trying to come up with a better look of that particular color I have. I'm taking some of that darker areas that okay. So painting is in progress. Keep moving. And I think what I'll do now is I'll add a little more. I think if I add a little more contrast to that purple mix, so I'll take some more of that. I'm taking quinacridone violet. I'm going to make this a little bit darker in here. I really want to make that center pop out. So I'm going to go in here and add a little more color here in the center. Make a little more contrast. So I'm adding contrast to the center of the blossom to emphasize that center. So I'm adding more quinacridone violet. Make that center portion come out. There we go. I'm going to dry that off a little bit. I'm adding more color and texture down here in the foreground. Okay, continue to blow dry. Okay. while this paint's still wet, I'm moving around just a little bit to get a little more contrast here in the center portion. And over here, a little more contrast. Just moving that color around a little bit, adding a little more color, even up here. This little one, this smaller one up here. Okay, all right, I'm going to take off the masking fluid here. There's some white areas. I put masking fluid to give some highlights down here. I may want to cover those up with some paint, but just to this gives me a little more texture down here in the foreground. Because there's lots of these vines and so forth that connect with the flowers that are down here in the foreground. And also connecting to the blossoms. What I think I'll do there is with the extra contrast of the whites, what I'll do is I'll take a little bit of color here from the green. And kind of go over that color just to knock it down just a little bit. You can still see the variation in there, but it won't be as much of a contrast as white without the color in it. Okay, the last thing I want to do is just take this rigger brush, mix up a little bit of dark green and a little bit of Payne's gray to make it nice and dark, and I'm going to do some calligraphy, just a little bit of calligraphy. And what that's going to do is I'm going to move these lines here a little bit to show vines that go around in this plants. Just indication, some connection. Also gives some direction. Some connectivity. Okay. Okay. All right, so I took the photograph and I came up. You see all those vines there on the bottom. So the vines that came up. The vines in the foreground, and so I come up there like that. Okay, let's put a mat around that. By 12. Put a mat around it. Okay. Okay. Well, there's my presentation of the morning glories, and dedicated to my wife Gloria, and to this program. Okay, let's go back to my main camera. Let me get myself here. And we'll talk a little bit about the references and so forth.
Can you
okay.
try one more time and tilt it just a little bit to show the true color? The light is washing it out on camera. Tilt towards you.
It is toward me. I'm
Okay.
moving it toward me. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Well, that
Yeah.
that helps. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's a
Yeah, what
lot.
Gloria's saying, sometimes the light here is so bright that it takes away, it washes out the colors, and I understand, yes, okay. All right.
Thank you.
I did this as a practice one. Here's a practice one I did. It's even maybe a little darker. But the idea there of getting the blossoms of the flowers in the background and then the middle ground with the foreground. Okay. Let's go to my main camera. Okay. I'm a landscape painter and I love to paint flowers, so I need to keep working on some of my flower paintings. So, hey, this is spring, and there's going to be a lot more flowers out there. And hey, thank you for viewing in, and give me a comment and give me a like and a thumbs up. And what I want to do now is I'll come back on next week at 2:30 or 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Thursday, Eastern Standard Time, and I'll do another painting. And then tonight I'm going to be coming back at 7:30 for Simply Drawing with Everett. And I'm going to draw a rose, so you might check in on that one. I'm going to draw it in pencil and add some dark lines to it, but you're going to see me draw a rose tonight. And then I'll put out anyone can draw with one line only on Sunday. So those are a couple of things that's going to happen on Thursday, tonight and on Sunday. So I know it's Easter time and you're all going to be visiting families and so forth, but I hope these flowers gave you some inspiration to try and also share on my program. You can, if you do a painting like this using my photograph and use my painting techniques, you can post them on Everett's Watercolors art group on Facebook. And until then, I'll see you next week. You all be safe. Happy Easter, and see you on the next video.